And I'm here with Jeroen and Eleanor to talk about the opportunities for Northern Ireland companies in relation to exporting to Russia. And Jeroen, if I could turn to you first and just ask you, what are the sort of opportunities that do exist in the Russian marketplace?
Well, there are many opportunities in Russia. As you know, GDP growth in Russia for the next 5 years stands somewhere around 3.8, 3.9%, which by far outstrips, let's say, the European GDP growth. Consumer spending in Russia is increasing with about 4 or 5% on an annual basis as well. The oil price is still high, so these three factors are a strong, let's say, boost under the Russian economy. And what you see is that, let's say, the traditional sectors in Russia are still growing, like agribusiness, industry, machine building, and so on. You also see new sectors or existing sectors where there's new developments, such as the healthcare sector, aerospace. But the most interesting developments and the highest growth rates you see at this moment in, for example, IT, software development, and e-commerce. So basically, over the whole spectrum of economic activities, you see growth rates with some sectors being, let's say, or showing a relatively new development.
And Eleanor, if I could turn to you and then ask, in relation to Northern Ireland companies looking at that particular market, do you see all of those sectors represented, or are there certain ones that are more prevalent?
Certainly over the past 3 years we've taken a number of missions out to the market, and we've had many of those sectors represented. Companies from food and drink, from agribusiness, machinery, materials handling have been particularly well represented. There are a number of companies doing very good business in the market. It's certainly a large market, as Jeroen said. There's good growth in the market, but it's not a market for inexperienced or first-time exporters perhaps. It's a market where companies really need to do their research in advance and be prepared to do business for the long term in the market.
And Jeroen, if I could ask you, what are the sorts of issues that companies need to be aware of if they're going to do business in Russia?
Well, first of all, you need to get your goods there, which means that your transport documents and customs documents need to be in order. You need to have a certificate for about 60% of goods that are exported to Russia. Certificates are needed, and these legal requirements towards transport, customs, and documents and certificates, they do not conform with any of the, let's say, the European or US documents that are there. So you need really to know what the legal framework is in Russia and what are the legal requirements for selling your goods or services there.
And do most companies end up doing direct sales, or is it joint ventures, distributors? What's the normal mechanism of entry?
Well, you would see, and I think most of the Northern Irish companies at this moment, they will be exporting to Russia. But usually they would not be exporting to their end customer. They would use importer distributors. So intermediary companies, Russian companies that have their own network amongst a certain client group that are importing that are buying from the Northern Irish company, that are importing on their name and selling on in the market. You don't really have a system of agents that would, let's say, work on a commission basis. You don't see a lot of exporters that directly ship to the end customer. Again, because you need this local counterpart in the market to take care of transport, customs, and so on.
And Eleanor, can I ask you if there are any cultural aspects that Northern Ireland companies need to be aware of if they're entering the market?
It is a very different market culturally and historically from the rest of Europe. So I think when companies embrace the challenge of doing business with Russia, they'll embrace the cultural aspects as well. So, you know, the formal business dress, the direct negotiations, kind of the short-termism of some of the contracts as well. You've got to negotiate hard and be really prepared for the market. So the whole cultural thing would be very different, and you know, a number of our companies have traded successfully there, but as Jeroen said, they are dealing through importers, but as they visit the market, they will pick up on the cultural differences and adapt and use those. And obviously language as well, having brochures, your material, promotional materials translated into Russian will be vitally important.
And Jeroen, if I could ask you in relation to companies who are successful, have they done a lot of preparation before they enter the market, and what type of preparation is that?
Well, obviously, Russia is a market where you want to be well prepared before you enter the market. First of all, you want to understand whether it's your market or not. Yeah, because I meet a lot of companies who basically haven't even started exporting yet to Benelux or to Germany or to Poland, and they immediately want to go to Russia. Sometimes it's justified, but very often it is not. Then, when you have decided that export to Russia is of interest to your company, then you should really look at the issues that were mentioned earlier, like do you need certification? Do I have the right documentation in order to my goods customs cleared, and so on. But the most important thing is that you need to be prepared to commit. You need to commit resources, time, human resources, effort, energy, and money, because Russia is not a market where you will have success overnight. Russia is also not a market where you can do business on an arm's length basis. You really need to be there. You need to be there regularly. You need to build relationships, because business in Russia is built to a large extent on personal relationships and trust.
And Eleanor, can I ask you, in terms of the support Invest Northern Ireland can offer, how can that help companies access the market?
Well, Invest NI have a range of support measures to help companies enter the market and trade successfully in the market. We have a partner in the market, consultancies, that we would use, so companies can have up to 10 days consultancy support to help them prepare to develop their market strategy, to look at the channels that they'll use to get into the market, for appointment setting, for example, and that's available to all companies. Equally, we have a couple of missions going to Russia each year, so companies can join a group multi-sector mission. That would also be available to them. So they're both sort of standard things and flexibility with the range of support as well that we offer. And to mention translation and legal support, we can offer support with translation services, 50% of the cost of translation, and the same on legal services, for example, setting up contracts and so on, which a number of companies have found very valuable.
And could I just ask you, in terms of that initial look at the Russian market and the market research that needs to be done, how vital is that element of the jigsaw?
Well, that's really vital, and that's where the market research and doing that in depth will help the company to make a proper assessment of the market. They can use our in-market consultants to help with that, and quite often where a company has a niche product, that could be the best route. They're getting really into the detail of the research, finding out about the customers that they're going to be servicing, the demand for the product in the market. That in-depth research is vital for them before they move into the market. Equally, we would have a number of market research off-the-shelf reports that our Market Information Centre based at Invest NI could help with, but once they get past that initial market scan, then they need to do very detailed market research to help them with their preparations for entering the market.
And if I could ask you both in conclusion, if you had a key tip that you wanted to pass on to a Northern Ireland business who was looking to do work and export to Russia, what would that tip be?
Well, there would be two tips basically. The first one would be a very simple one, but a very important one, and it's that you have to enjoy Russia. Russia is a country where everything just takes a little bit more time and effort, and again, you need to have an affinity for the place in order to give that effort, but also you need to have an affinity for the place in order to build lasting business relationships with your business partners. That's the first thing. The second tip is that you should approach doing business in Russia like you drive a car. You should keep your hands on the steering wheel, your foot on the gas, close to the brake. You should keep your eyes on the road. You should understand where you are and where you want to get, and when you're lost, and you shouldn't fall asleep. And if you apply all those rules that you apply on a daily basis when driving your car to doing business in Russia, then you can't fail.
And Eleanor?
I think Russia offers tremendous opportunities for companies across a range of sectors, as we've mentioned. Preparation before you go into the market and as you trade in the market, keeping up to date with research, using the resources that Invest NI can provide by way of support, by way of access to consultancy services and on-the-ground advice, using those to your best advantage. There are so many supports available to help companies get into the market, and we just encourage them to use those.
Eleanor, Jeroen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.